This is the PowerPoint of Russia under the Czars, so what Russia was like before the Russian Revolution. And the photo that we're looking at is the back of the Winter Palace. So the front of it is where the 1905 Bloody Sunday occurred. On the back of it is along a river, and it's just a pretty picture to look at. This is in St. Petersburg. All right, so under the Czars, the type of government Russia had was an absolute monarchy ruled by a czar. So again, kind of similar to Kaiser and Caesar. The czar was the ruler of Russia, and his power was unlimited. He could make or cancel any law whenever he wished. So again, that's kind of the idea of absolute power, where the monarch can make any decision, they can make any rule, any law, any punishment, and their power is unlimited. The Tsar of Russia at the time of the revolution was Nicholas, and as a young man, he was not really interested in government, and his father didn't train him to take over. And unfortunately, his father died unexpectedly, and Nicholas wasn't really prepared to become the Tsar. So he kind of stepped into being a ruler unprepared, unexpectedly. And he was of the mindset that absolute rule was the best system, and he was against giving the people any voice in the government. So the people of Russia had no say in the government, and the Tsar had absolute power. And for a while, like, a lot of people were okay with it because they believed that the Tsar was like closest to God. So it wasn't that big of a deal for most people in Russia. The social structure, as we looked at today, so there's the czar at the top, and then society was dominated by a small, wealthy group of nobles, and they owned large estates and several houses. And again, the nobles in Russia looked a lot more like the French than they did Russian. So they enjoyed like the arts, ballet, literature. They traveled all over Europe. A lot of them spoke French, ate French things. Didn't really have a lot in common with the Russian peasants. And then the peasants of Russia, so their birth rate was twice that of the rest of Europe. So again, very growing population. 1 out of 4 infants died before their first birthday. So kind of looks a little bit like the Middle Ages, where there's growing population, high death rate for infants. Only a third of peasants actually owned a horse. And in 1890, 60% of peasant draftees were rejected for physical or medical reasons. So drafting into the military, most peasants were rejected for health reasons, which kind of tells you that like the health of the people wasn't that great, either through the medicine wasn't that good or the working conditions were very poor. But there were signs of improvement. The literacy rate was rising. So in 1897, it was at 21%, but about 15, 16 years later, it doubled to 40%. By 1911, more than half of all peasant children were attending school, so we're starting to see an increase in education. And as we saw in that oil field picture today, foreign investment was beginning to develop Russia's industry. So Russia was beginning to industrialize, but it was a lot of foreign investors. So in the oil field picture today, we saw that it was owned by a Swedish company. But again, they're starting to invest in Russia. And as a result, Russia's industry was growing almost twice as fast as Germany's and 4 times as fast as Britain's. So they're starting to improve, starting to industrialize, starting to educate. And then there's the family. So Tsar Nicholas and his family, again, he had a wife, 4 daughters, and a son. He was an absolutely devoted father and husband. He and his wife, Alexandra, loved each other dearly. They were very close, which is kind of rare for monarchs to be married to someone that they're so close with. He was related to almost all the other kings in Europe. So the Kaiser of Germany and the King of England, or Great Britain, they were all cousins. So they called each other like Cousin Nicky, Cousin Willie. They were all grandsons of Queen Victoria of Great Britain. So again, he's related to all the other kings of England. One of his big problems is that he needed a male heir. And again, he and his wife had 4 daughters before they finally had a son. And the son had hemophilia and was unlikely to live very long. So again, one of the signs of a strong king in this time is you have a male heir. That was a priority, so that's going to cause some problems later on.